The cold wind bit through the automatic doors of the community center, but the real chill ran through Claire's chest as she stood frozen in the lobby, her fingers trembling near her chin. She looked like a woman holding her breath in a world that refused to slow down long enough for her to catch it. She barely noticed the rush of people moving past her. All she saw was the sign on the wall that read, "Emergency Assistance Desk." It might as well have been a towering wall of shame, blocking her, daring her, reminding her of how far she had fallen. She had rehearsed a dozen sentences on the walk over, yet every one of them dissolved the moment her lips parted. But before Claire could force out a single word, a soft, steady voice behind her broke through her panic, one she didn't expect, one she hadn't asked for, one that felt like a lifeline tossed to someone drowning in silence. If you believe kindness still exists in this world and everyone deserves a second chance, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your engagement truly helps stories like this reach more hearts. Claire had never planned to be standing here, clutching her own elbows as though holding herself together was the only thing she had left. She used to work a full-time job, drive her own car, pay her own bills, and live without needing anyone's help. That version of her had confidence in her stride and purpose in her voice. But after the unexpected layoffs at the marketing firm in Denver, followed by the medical bills from her mother's sudden stroke, Claire's life had spiraled faster than she could ever stabilize. Her savings vanished. Her apartment went next. And now, she found herself avoiding the mirror because she didn't want to see the exhaustion painted across her face. She didn't want to admit she had reached a point where even a warm meal felt like a luxury. But she wasn't just afraid of her circumstances, she was afraid of being judged. Afraid of someone looking at her and seeing weakness instead of a woman who fought as long as she could. She struggled to breathe as she stepped back, unsure, debating whether to bolt out the door and disappear into the anonymity of the crowded streets. That was when she felt someone's presence behind her. Not threatening, just aware, gentle. Claire turned slightly and saw him, a man in his early 30s, clean-shaven with light stubble, tired eyes but a warm expression. He wore a simple navy jacket and held a worn-out backpack slung over one shoulder. Beside him stood a small girl, maybe 6 years old, holding a stuffed rabbit by its ear. The girl looked up at her father with quiet trust, and he looked down at her as though she were the center of his entire universe. Claire realized she recognized him from earlier that morning. He had been speaking to the receptionist, thanking her for helping him with a childcare transportation voucher. He was just another struggling face in the building, another person trying to stay afloat. Yet something about him felt steady. Calm. Someone who knew what it meant to fall and still rise. Before she could look away, he stepped closer and spoke with a voice that wrapped around her like a blanket on a cold night. He told her she didn't need to explain what she was going through. He said he could see the weight she was carrying because he had carried that same weight once too. He gently asked her if she had eaten anything that day. Claire's throat tightened as she tried to speak, but nothing came out. She shook her head without meaning to. The man nodded softly, as if that single gesture was all the explanation he needed. He introduced himself as Marcus, and the little girl as his daughter, Hazel. He told Claire that he knew what it felt like to be standing in a place built to help people, yet feeling too ashamed to step forward. He explained how after his wife passed away unexpectedly 3 years ago, he had gone from a stable life to absolute chaos in a matter of months. He lost his job, then his home, and found himself showing up at places like this, feet trembling, pride shattered, asking strangers for grace. The world hadn't been kind to him then. But a few people had been. Just enough to bridge the gap between despair and hope. Claire listened, tears forming despite her efforts to hide them. Marcus didn't look at her with pity. He looked at her like someone who saw her humanity, someone who understood that hardship wasn't a character flaw. It was something life threw at people without warning, without mercy, without pause. Marcus gently asked whether she needed groceries or transportation or a place to stay warm. Claire could feel her defenses collapsing. The honesty in his tone made her feel safe enough to confess the truth she hadn't spoken out loud. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. She didn't know how she would cover the rest of the week. She didn't know how to start over when everything felt like broken pieces she could no longer assemble. Marcus nodded again, quietly motioning for her to follow him. He led her and Hazel toward the small cafeteria inside the center, where local volunteers served meals for families in need. The warm smell of soup filled the air. Claire's stomach tightened with both hunger and shame, but Marcus made her feel like she belonged there just as much as anyone else. They sat together at a table, and Hazel placed her stuffed rabbit in front of Claire as if offering comfort. Claire felt her throat burn with emotion. No one had shown her such simple kindness in months. As she ate slowly, every bite a reminder of how empty she had been, Marcus shared more of his story. How he had fought through sleepless nights caring for Hazel alone, how he had worked odd jobs until he landed a stable one at a delivery company, and how he was still rebuilding but no longer drowning. Claire found herself opening up too. She admitted how terrified she was of starting from scratch, how embarrassed she felt walking into the assistance center, how tired she was from pretending she was fine. Marcus listened without interrupting, letting her speak until she finally breathed again. He told her that asking for help wasn't weakness, it was survival. He told her she was not alone. He told her she was stronger than she realized, because only strong people kept going after life tried to break them. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the cafeteria windows, illuminating Claire's face as though life was beginning to reach her again. The heaviness in her chest loosened. She felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: relief. Safety. Hope. Marcus helped her fill out the necessary forms for assistance. He showed her resources she didn't know existed: food vouchers, temporary housing programs, career support centers. He even shared the number of a hiring manager at his workplace who was looking for part-time help. All the while, Hazel kept smiling at Claire like she was already part of their small world. Evening approached, and while the building began to empty, Claire lingered near the doorway. She felt different stepping outside. The sky looked wider, the air felt kinder, the weight on her shoulders lighter. Marcus walked beside her, Hazel holding both of their hands like she had decided they needed each other. Claire looked up at the sky and realized the moment her life had changed was not when she walked into the building, but when Marcus spoke before she could gather the courage to ask. Sometimes the world doesn't wait for you to cry for help. Sometimes, unexpectedly, someone steps in because they recognize the silent breaking inside you. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your engagement truly helps bring more meaningful stories to those who need them. Before the story ends, I have one special request: comment below with one moment in your life when someone showed you unexpected kindness. As Claire walked away with her new friends, she realized she wasn't broken. She was rebuilding. And sometimes rebuilding begins with a stranger who sees you before you even whisper a word.